So you may have heard this term called machine learning, but you might be wondering what it is. And it can be quite confusing in some degrees. So we'll start off with an example. Say I give you this bunch of information. So I say that there's a car that weighs 1,000 kilograms, and the fuel efficiency of this car is 40 miles per gallon. We're using miles here because it's an American data set. I also tell you there's a 3,000 kilogram car, and that has a fuel efficiency of 20 miles per gallon. And I ask you this question. So if there was a car that weighs 2,000 kilograms, how much do you expect the miles per gallon to be? Karim, do you know? What would you guess?
So guessing by the pattern here in the data, I'm going to guess 30 miles per gallon, just because the weight of the car is in between the two weights that we see there.
So congratulations. You've done basically a form of machine learning, which is basically finding patterns in the data and then using those patterns to predict things that you haven't seen before, basically. So what we're doing here, we have a bunch of inputs, and then you have a bunch of outputs. And we're trying to map the inputs to the outputs. So in the case here, the input is the weight of the car, the output is the fuel efficiency. And this is a certain type of machine learning called supervised learning. So there are other types of machine learning, such as unsupervised learning and reinforcement learning. But the most commonly used one is supervised learning. So that is what we'll be going through in this section of the course. You might also be wondering what the difference between AI, machine learning, and you may have also heard of this term called deep learning, what the differences are. Let's start off with AI. So artificial intelligence is a very general term that basically has to do with creating intelligent behavior in computers that basically tries to mimic humans. So that's a very broad, not very well-defined word, artificial intelligence. And then a subset of artificial intelligence is machine learning. These are more to do with the mathematical models you use for machine learning. So that could be statistical techniques or other machine learning models and algorithms that you use for this purpose of getting more intelligent behavior. And then deep learning is a subset of machine learning. Again, it's a specific type of specific class of algorithms that have to do with and these have been quite successful recently in things like images and analyzing images and language. We won't be able to get into deep learning in this course, but the linear regression type things that we'll go through is actually quite a foundational piece in things, and it's just a more complicated version of that deep learning basically is. So going back to our example, it's basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a function essentially that maps inputs x to the outputs y. So if you remember your high school maths, you may have come across y equals mx plus c, which is the equation for a line. So in this case, what machine learning is basically trying to find the m and the c in this data set. So linear regression, trying to find the m and the c.
And just a reminder for anyone that's forgotten this equation, m is the gradient and c is the intercept on the y-axis.
Yeah, m is the rise over run, the slope of the graph. And you can think of machine learning as basically trying to find the m's and the c's. And it'll be much more complicated. So example, if you've got this just has a weight. So you could have m1 times x1, which is the weight. And if you have more variables, it'll be m1 times x1 plus m22 plus c. So that this can get more complicated, and then you can add nonlinear stuff, which is where things like deep learning come in. But essentially, you can think of it as a function approximator, and linear regression is trying to basically find the best fit line that fits the data. So it won't be an exact fit all the time, but we're basically trying to find the line that best fits the data. And you can think of deep learning. So in the case of more complicated things like images, We usually use convolutional neural nets for images, and you can still think of it as a supervised learning problem where the inputs are images of cats or dogs or images in general, and the output, you have the label, either a cat or a dog. And what the machine learning algorithm is trying to, so the images are consist of millions of numbers. You can think of them like the intensities of the different colors. And the function, the neural network in this case, is basically trying to find those M's and the M's and the C's in the, trying to come up with an equation that goes from the input numbers into the outputs, which will be things like the label cat or dog. So that's basically an overview of machine learning.